Time to call a credit repair company to fix my credit.
Hold the phone, man. You can do it yourself with Credit Versio.
That's way too hard. Call the credit repair company. Most credit repair companies only work on 1 or 2 accounts at a time, making it slow and expensive. You won't figure that out for months. Ignore him. Credit Versio's brilliant software scans all 3 credit bureaus, finds the accounts that are hurting your score, and guides you through the entire process. Anyone can do it. Let's fast forward and see the results. Wow, I fixed my own credit and saved hundreds. You can do this. Visit creditversio.com.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
You see, Head & Shoulders has scalp shield technology, protects against flakes even between washes. It's never not working.
Kind of like us. We're never not working. Number 15?
That's my rub.
Ooh, nice.
Never not working.
Never, ever, never, ever not working.
Welcome, everybody, to Juneau, Alaska.
I don't like this one.
Me neither.
Let's get out of here.
Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders scalp shield technology.
If you think all pads are exactly the same, think again. This is Always Ultra Thins reinvented with the Always Triple Protection System. This pad wicks gushes 90% faster, absorbs even more so you can feel dry, and locks odors in. Rethink your pad for up to 100% leak-free and odor-free comfort with the totally reinvented Always Ultra Thins. This is always like never before.
This is the BCSN Pod Zone, your place for the news, views, and conversations about all things related to HBCU athletics. Here are the BCSN SportsWrap, Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Knights of the Round Table, the pregame show, the Carlos Brown Show, the ONG Strike Zone, and more in one place. We are changing the way you consume HBCU sports, one broadcast at a time.
I don't know why these presets not working right.
Hello, happy holidays, Merry Christmas Eve, and Merry Christmas, depending upon when you're actually watching this show. It's the BCSN SportsWrap. It's 80 Drew. 80, Merry Christmas Eve to you. How you doing today, my brother?
Doing fine, my brother. Doing fine.
I can't hear you. Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
That doesn't help.
Check 1, 2. Can't hear Drew.
Mic check
That's
1,
all
2.
right, though. I'm the one that's
Mic
in the
check
cold
1,
waiting
2.
to hear Drew.
Okay, you hear me now?
So as we wait to hear, that's AD Drew. Still can't hear him. I'm Bryan Fulford here. We are trying to
Mic
do
check
this
1, 2.
live here. Still can't hear you.
Mic check
Your
1,
mouth
2.
moving. Still not hearing any
Mic check
audio.
1, 2. Mic check. Mic check.
So we are trying to do a live Christmas Eve show. Give Drew
Mic
a
check
second
1, 2.
to jump back
Mic
in.
check
Still
1, 2.
Again,
Mic check
we
1,
try
2.
to, the only reason still can't hear you, Drew. So we're trying to do this on Christmas Eve. Our normal show time is on Sunday evening. Obviously, Sunday is Christmas, and neither one of us wanted to be doing a
Mic
show
Mic
on
check.
Christmas night. Although, given my current location, where if you're looking at me and you're looking at Drew, you're saying somebody must be in some cold weather temperatures. It's me. That's right. As I'm literally chilling with my family somewhere out here in East Atlanta Metro with my family. I'm the one that's out here in a cold garage doing the show. Drew is in his home studio. Thus, you see the pictures of Michael Jordan in the game room behind me. And of course, if my FAMU Scully cap doesn't give it away how cold it is, that's how cold it is. So depending upon when you catch this show, you may be catching it live, you may catch it later, you may catch it sometime over the weekend or the beginning of this next week. We want to wish you and your family happy holidays, Merry Christmas, happy Kwanzaa to all of those that you celebrate. And Drew, we're still waiting on Drew's microphone to get squared away. The purpose of today's show, we're going to try to get in and out and hopefully within an hour. Those of you who are familiar with the show, you probably laugh as I just said that, because there's nothing that we've ever done in less than an hour. But I promise to the heavens, I promise, as real as Santa Claus is, that we are going to get in and out within an hour for a couple of reasons. One, I'm cold. Two, at any point in time, a family member or a dog, there's 3 dogs in this place that we're at, may come barging through this room. Although this is the coldest room in the house, so I doubt anyone wants to come in here. But at any point in time, a family member could come in and join me on this show, unaware of what I'm actually doing here. And then number 3, there is some football happening on the TV screens. Those of you who are familiar, we'll try to check that out. Let me do this here because I think we may need to take a quick little time out and see if we can figure out what's going on with Drew's mic, the power of live internet streaming. So we're going to take a quick time out, try to see if we can get Drew's microphone set up, and then come back into this show with what we plan to talk to you about right after this break. You're watching the BCSN Sports Wrap.
We'll be back in just a moment.
Time to call a credit repair company to fix my credit.
Hold the phone, man. You can do it yourself with Credit Versio.
That's way too hard. Call the credit repair company. Most credit repair companies only work on 1 or 2 accounts at a time, making it slow and expensive. You won't figure that out for months. Ignore him. Credit Versio's brilliant software scans all 3 credit bureaus, finds the accounts that are hurting your score, and guides you through the entire process. Anyone can do it. Let's fast forward and see the results. Wow, I fixed my own credit and saved hundreds.
You can do this. Visit creditversio.com.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
You see, Head & Shoulders has scalp shield technology, protects against flakes even between washes. It's never not working.
Kind of like us. We're never not working. Number 15?
That's my rub.
Ooh, nice.
Never not working.
Never, ever, never, ever not working.
Welcome, everybody, to Juneau, Alaska.
I don't like this one.
Me neither.
Let's get out of here.
Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders scalp shield technology.
If you think all pads are exactly the same, think again. This is Always Ultra Thins reinvented with the Always Triple Protection System. This pad wicks gushes 90% faster, absorbs even more so you can feel dry, and locks odors in. Rethink your pad for up to 100% leak-free and odor-free comfort with the totally reinvented Always Ultra Thins. This is always like never before.
This is the BCSN Pod Zone, your place for the news, views, and conversations about all things related to HBCU athletics. Here are the BCSN SportsWrap, Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Knights of the Round Table, the pregame show, the Carlos Brown Show, the ONG Strike Zone, and more in one place. We are changing the way you consume HBCU sports, one broadcast at a time.
Time to call a credit repair company to fix my credit.
Hold the phone, man. You can do it yourself with Credit Versio.
That's way too hard. Call the credit repair company. Most credit repair companies only work on 1 or 2 accounts at a time, making it slow and expensive. You won't figure that out for months. Ignore him. Credit Versio's brilliant software scans all 3 credit bureaus, finds the accounts that are hurting your score, and guides you through the entire process. Anyone can do it. Let's fast forward and see the results. Wow, I fixed my own credit and saved hundreds.
You can do this. Visit creditversio.com.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
You see, Head & Shoulders has scalp shield technology, protects against flakes, even...
All right, welcome back to the BCSN SportsWrap. Bryan Fulford here, soon to be joined by AD Drew. We're trying to get some technical difficulties figured out with him. Again, on remote location. It is cold where I'm at, about the best as I can describe it. So, appreciate, I see Lee, appreciate you coming in and jumping in and joining us there. So, we'll try to do some things here. The idea of what we wanted to try to do today, and look, our normal show is on Sundays, right? Sunday evening, 6 p.m. to 8. We were really faced with doing a Christmas show or doing no show or doing a show either Saturday or Monday. I technically didn't want to do Monday. I think Drew didn't want to do or go without a show at all, because there is a lot. We like doing our year-in review kind of stuff, and so obviously next week is, guess what, New Year's Eve. So there's no good time. So we appreciate everyone who watches and listens to the show, whether you're watching on Facebook and YouTube. Please hit the thumbs up button wherever you're at. Hopefully you're already following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at MyBCSN1, the number one. And if you're listening to this show, then you're probably listening to it on the podcast later via the BCSN Pod Zone. But we want to try to continue to keep pushing out content. And so we realized we had not officially released the BCSN, the Black College Sports Network's national champions, which should not be big surprise to many. And then also we're going to do our year in review, which I put a poll out on Twitter to kind of see would people be more receptive to a year in review by sport or by calendar year. Promise that's not eggnog, and it's not anything. Although I do need a hot toddy right now. It is probably 60 degrees in the room that I'm at. Thus, this Scully here. Okay, so again, put the poll out to see: would you rather have a year in review by sport or by calendar year? Most people poll was overwhelmingly by sport. So we said, obviously, football, having just finished up, probably easier to talk about the past 2022 as it relates to football. So that's what we'll hopefully do a little bit later into the show. But let's go ahead and officially put out, our Black College national champions. And the one thing that I'm wanting to make sure I don't have all of the historicals on our national champions. I can probably tell you the last couple years. But with we broke ours up into BCSN with the Division I and non-Division I. The non-Division I used to be called under D1. So just to kind of differentiate between a lot of polls out there. And so it is a ranking. It is not voted on. It's all computer based. The algorithm that our power rankings assigns value to each team's record strength of schedule, road or neutral site victories, and their power ranking. We go through the season after the first 4 weeks of the year of the football season, and that's when we start. So we don't start with necessarily a preseason poll, and then we get into naming a poll after week 4. So of course, like for many people, let's start with the non-Division One, and our non-Division One champion is none other than the Benedict College Tigers, who finished their season 11-1, 8-0 in the SIC. They finished the season with the top position in the NCAA Division II Super Region 2. They were the SIC champions. They completed the regular season undefeated, and they were tops in our BCSN computer rankings with 271 total points. And so, congratulations to Coach Chennis Berry. And there you can see the rankings. Now, coming in at number 2, and this was tight. You look at the total points here. It was Virginia Union, who finished 9-2, 7-1. Obviously, they did not make the CIAA championship, but they were pretty much the number 1 team in our computer rankings up until the point when they lost. So that's pretty much how that went for them. So props to Virginia Union, who had a great season, coming in at number 2. Number 3 was Fayetteville State, of course, the CIAA champions, after finishing the bridesmaid the previous 3 to 4 years. I think 4 years it was. They finished their season 9-3, 8-1 overall. Number 4 was Tuskegee. Tuskegee came in with an overall record of 8-3, 7-1. Of course, they won 8 games in a row. Lost in the SIC
Mic check, Brian.
championship
Can you hear me?
game, after an amazing run during the regular season. And then coming in 5th place was Fort Valley State. Fort Valley State coming in with an overall record of 8-2. Just missed out on the Division II playoffs. So it's the first national champion for Benedict. The previous 3 seasons, the previous 3 playing seasons had gone to Bowie State.
Mic check, Brian. Can you hear me?
Been a 3-peat champion in our standings, and so here's Benedict finishing up this year number 1, and it's kind of interesting to see what might have happened had we actually got our dream matchup of Virginia Union versus Benedict
Check 1, 2.
that first game. So, hey, I'm told AD that they can hear you. I can't hear you, AD, so that's kind of interesting. Appreciate CD jumping in there, saying that they can hear AD. I hope he's not cursing and fussing at anybody in the background. I don't know what he's saying back there. But again, AD, I can't hear you. Let's see if I can hear you. Let's try that. Try that now, Drew. Any chance you're talking back there?
Mic check 1, 2, Brian. Mic check 1, 2.
Hey, I hear you, Drew.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Hey, Drew. There you go.
Long time no hear.
Yeah. Okay. Good to hear. Yeah, interesting. So, okay, Drew.
But I've heard the whole conversation, so we good.
Okay, good deal. Okay, so we were just showing Benedict College as our Division I. The history prior to, correct me if I'm wrong, Bowie's been the last 3 playing seasons champions. Is that correct? Was there anybody before that? I'm trying to recall where we.
No, that Bowie was the first year that we decided to do it.
Yeah. So we've only been doing the polls for probably the last 5 years.
18.
Yeah, so that's about 5 seasons. And of course, we did have the COVID year, which technically we did not do a poll. We did not do, even though schools in the FCS played, and other organizations named Alabama A&M champion. We did not issue any type of champion during the COVID year of what was that? 2021.
2020 season.
Yeah, the 2020 season, which they played in the spring of 21. So that was the one year we did not do a poll over these last 5 years. So Benedict is our first champion other than Bowie State. So congratulations again to Coach Dennis Perry. On the Division I side, it was, I said this before the show, Drew, or before we even got to this point. It'd been a long time since we had an undisputed 1 versus 2. I think there was one of those years where you had A&T and Alcorn that came into the Celebration Bowl as 1 versus 2. And so this going into it, we had undisputed Jackson State, who had been number 1 from beginning of the season, from the preseason polls all the way up until they weren't at the end of the year. Central had been a strong number 2, even when they kind of lost a couple of games there in the middle of their season. They still found their way back into the number 2 spot. And so we just had a natural 1 versus 2 showdown. The game was settled on the field, instant classic, great game. And so North Carolina Central is our Division I HBCU football national champion after their 41-34 overtime victory. Central earned the top computer rating by accumulating 329 points through the season. Of course, they are the champions of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference and won the Celebration Bowl. So I'm sure, I think that is it's been a long time since we've had an undisputed champion, but I think Central is definitely undisputed. I don't think it, so outside of Central at 1, in second you had Jackson State, in 2, of course, finishing second in the Celebration Bowl. FAMU finished 3rd, 9-2. A&T, North Carolina A&T finished 4th, and Alabama State finished 5th. Now, Drew, what's interesting, that top 5, right? There were only 7 Division I teams that finished with a winning record. So there's 5 of them right there. Can you name the other 2 offhand? Just see, now you cheated. You cheated now. I was trying to go trivia with you, and but you just put it up there. So yeah. What's your thoughts, Drew, on that? That only 7 Division I teams are actually, have winning records.
What are my thoughts about it? It is it's unfortunate. That's the best way to put it. It is unfortunate that there are only 7 out of 20. Is it 21?
21.
Yes,
yeah, 21.
21. So 1/3 of our teams finish with winning records. Now, Brian, do you think part of that is because the MEAC only plays a 5-game conference schedule? So they were able to beat up on each other and accumulate some victories, having to go out and play non-HBCU opponents in the MEAC? Possibly. The fact that Howard and A&T are in what are perceived more competitive conferences, although A&T had a good run in their conference. I said Howard, I meant to say Hampton. Hampton's move to the CAA was not fruitful in their conference season, so they were not able to accumulate conference wins. Because when you take a look at this, Brian, the difference is the non-conference. Howard goes 4-1 in conference, but they go 5-6 overall. So,
but here's the thing, Drew. What is this? Yeah. What is this? Here's about what it says. The MEAC, half of your season is non-conference games.
Over half.
Well, okay, yeah.
6 out of 11.
11 games, 6 out of 11. So, yeah, over half. are non-conference.
Right.
And most of the schools are outside of Central. And correct me if I'm wrong, outside of Central, did anybody else have a winning record in the MEAC?
In the MEAC, that would be
Yeah,
a
I
negative.
don't think that, yeah. So basically,
not only that, let me take that one step further. Outside of Central, I believe every MEAC team played in FBS, which is almost a guaranteed loss.
right.
So
Yeah.
chalk those up. Everybody at the MEAC played either Lynchburg. I believe everybody played Lynchburg except for Lynchburg played 4 of the 6 MEAC teams, so that was one of those non-conference victories, and most other teams played a D2 team. So, that balances out that FBS loss that they have. So that means that outside of Central, we weren't competitive in the MEAC when it comes to FCS competitions.
How interesting is it? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, how interesting is it that we usually bust on the SWAC for their non-conference successes or failures? This year, I think the SWAC did quite admirably with their non-conference successes, and it was the MEAC who actually came up, overall on the short end in terms of, getting wins, getting W's in the non-conference,
That would be correct, Brian. And you hit it on the head. And when you compare that to the next 5 in the non-Division One, wrong graph. Look at their out-of-conference record for the next 5 that we have. Look at their overall records. Everybody in the second 5 in the non-Division One was 500 or better.
Yeah. So everybody, and of course, what you're showing people is the final top 10 there of the non-Division One, which I didn't mention, but the final 5, 6 through 10, rounded out: Albany State, Virginia State, Bowie State, Savannah State, Langston. That's how the top 10 ended for this season. Yeah, so that's a big storyline going into next year. The MEAC will have to improve their non-conference success rate. So that'll be something to pay attention to.
There's also A&T going into the CAA, a more competitive, tougher conference than the Big South that they dominated the last couple of years. So does that bring A&T down to that Mendoza line, that 500 line? What about Tennessee State? Does Tennessee State get over the hurdle in the Ohio Valley / Big South now? Because the Big South doesn't have enough teams to compete, so they've combined those 2 conferences for a playoff bid. So can A&T can TSU pick up some wins right there? A lot of moving parts going to be going on with these schedules here, Brian.
Okay. Since we had so many difficulties here in the beginning, do you want to take a break before we do our football year in review, or do you want to jump right into it? What's your thoughts here? What do you want to do?
Let's get a break. I want to make sure we've got everything on the back end. Since we are off script now, I need to know exactly where we are on the script so we can continue on, and so we can prepare to pick up this show and get out of here as soon as we can.
Exactly, because I think the temperature has dropped a degree or two since I've been where I am. And again, if you see, okay, no, so there's no cold air coming. Not yet. I swear I have space heaters on in this room that I'm in, but it's just cold. So yeah. All right, let's step away, take a break. You're watching the BCSN Sports Wrap, our year in review for football. We'll be back in just a moment.
This is the BCSN Pod Zone, your place for the news, views, and conversations about all things related to HBCU athletics. Here the BCSN SportsWrap, Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Knights of the Round Table, the pregame show, the Carlos Brown Show, the ONG Strike Zone, and more in one place. We are changing the way you consume HBCU sports, one broadcast at a time.
Hey, welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. Bryan Fulford and AD Drew here. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas Eve is when we're recording this. Merry Christmas and Happy Kwanzaa. Or just, hey, thanks for joining us. Whether you celebrate the holidays or not, hopefully you get time to spend with your friends, family, and loved ones. And enjoy this time. We obviously we wanted to do this show in place of our normal show that we do Sunday nights, as because Sunday nights is Christmas, and then next Sunday is New Year's. So I don't think we're doing a show next Sunday night. So we'll have to plan around that too. So I don't know, Drew. We'll figure it out. Now that one I may not be opposed to doing New Year's Eve night. I don't know. We'll talk about it later. But what we wanted to do is
depends on what you normally do on New Year's Eve night.
Yeah. I appreciate you, C. Lee. Yeah, I don't know if it's 45 degrees. I'll tell you what, it's less than 45 degrees outside here in the Atlanta metro area. I know that. And so in this room where I'm at, it is probably, I'd say conservatively 60, maybe 55. Thankfully, there's no wind blowing. So, yeah. But
hey everybody, right. why don't you put it to the chat how cold it is where you are at?
Yeah, exactly. Let us know how cold it is, or send us a tweet at DRB365 or at BCSN Drew, or if you're watching on Facebook or Twitter, let us know. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube as well. Let us know what's the temperature like. Obviously, this cold front has swept through. Even back in my hometown of Orlando, Drew, it's like 30 degrees down there. So
it's a balmy 21 here where I live at, Brian.
Yeah, man. God bless you. God bless you. I'm not far from you. Okay, let's get into the year in review. This is the football year in review. So we're going to go back month by month, kind of spotlighting some of the news and things that happened over the course of the 2022 year, from January all the way to December. And so when we get into January, Drew, a lot of just administrative things happened. I would probably say the biggest news might have been the fact that Hampton University, I almost called them Institute, Hampton University announced that they were going to move to the CAA, the Colonial Athletic Association, in which would have made it their third such move in
5 years.
In 5 years, going from obviously the MEAC to the Big South to the Colonial.
No, MEAC Independent, Big South, Colonial.
Okay, yeah, I guess they would have been. Were they a year independent?
Yes.
Okay. Good point. So yeah, that was and then all the articles that came out, said Hampton, that's what they wanted. Hampton always, their previous president who had been there for years, dreamed, which is odd to me. I don't, but that's another story, another conversation, I'm sure, as to why Hampton, who was in the CIAA at one time, wanted to separate from HBCUs. But anyway, so it'll be interesting to see how Hampton's move. We'll get into talking about what the domino effect, obviously, from Hampton's move. We also had new coaches in new places. Head coach Willie Slater, Drew, after how many years at Tuskegee?
16.
16. Just kind of
And
quietly.
I believe that
I
was
mean,
17, but 16 on the sideline because of COVID.
quietly left Tuskegee at the end of 2021. And I say quietly because there should have been a bigger fanfare for Willie Slater. Drew, what's the backstory? Any backstory on why there was never a big fanfare for Coach Slater when he left?
When you get to the end of a run, I think everybody knows it's time. That's the best thing to say. The interesting thing about that is going back to November, when November 21, when Slater announced he was no longer going to be serving as athletic director. Some were assuming that they were going to bring in an athletic director to take the administrative portion of the job away from him and still allow him to be the head football coach. But we saw in December when Coach Reginald Ruffin was announced that that was not the case. And the interesting thing about it, Dr. Charlotte Morris, who is the current president of Tuskegee, is the person who appointed Willie Slater as at that time, the interim athletic director when she was the interim president of the university. She later named him president, but she was the interim. So she left. There was another president in between, and then that didn't work out. So 2 years later, Dr. Boris is called upon once again to become the president of Tuskegee University, who's still her athletic director, Coach Slater. So, somewhere in those 2-3 years in between that, some things kind of soured. I think there was some pressure from alumni to make a change. So that's what happened. Staff had turned over tremendously during those 3 years. So when you have the additional task of being athletic director along with head coach, and your staff has turned over during that time, started a successful formula for victory.
Yep. And so popped up in January, you look up and say, oh, Willie Slater's back on the sideline with Clark. And very surprising to many of us. But it sounds like he was very pleased with, I remember the press conference and some of the quotes. He was very pleased with some of the amenities that Clark had, which it sounded like he wasn't getting from Tuskegee. And so it was quite noticeable that he was happy with what he was getting. And I think Clark had an improvement
He
this
got
year.
lights.
Right?
He got a real locker room.
Yeah, exactly. So
not a double wide for a locker room.
Right, exactly. So,
hey y'all, I can talk about my university because I went there.
Right, there was an improvement from Clark this past year, so they definitely look like a better, well coached team this past year with Coach Slater. I think you look for a big growth going into 2023. Also in the SWAC, I believe the last head coach to be named in the offseason was Bubba McDowell, who was an assistant coach. He was named the head coach at Prairie View in January. Of course, Coach Dooley had left Prairie View to go back to Southern back in December of 2021. And so that left kind of the last opening in January for Bubba McDowell to come on board. And then one other note from January, former commissioner of the MEAC, Dennis Thomas, went into the College Football Hall of Fame in January. So sort of a great send-off after many long years and service, not only to the MEAC, but Black college football. Obviously, Commissioner Thomas's legacy being the Celebration Bowl. So it was kind of nice to see him get that recognition in the highest. Obviously, he had already been named to the Black College Football Hall of Fame, but then to be recognized at the national level was pretty nice there. All right, Drew, moving into February, got a couple another coaching hire, which was kind of late, but it turned out to be a good choice for this school. Fort Valley State ended up announcing Sean Gibbs as their new head coach in February. So Sean Gibbs became the new head coach coming over from North Carolina A&T. And as we found out, Drew, that turned out to be a great hire.
And that was after Maurice Flowers left Fort Valley and moved over to Johnson C, which I believe he is an alumnus of Johnson C. Smith.
Right, right. Of course, Gibbs ended up taking Fort Valley State to 8-2. I knew going into the year that he had a good running back in Emmanuel Wilson. He had a good quarterback, and that team was going to be a tough out. And I turned out to be kind of right on that, Drew. But Fort Valley will be one of those favorites next year in the SIAC, I would say, wouldn't you?
Definitely should be a favorite SIAC. You know, it's going to be interesting with the new schedule model that announced in the SIAC, how that really affects the Alabama Invitational in the West, where Tuskegee and Miles pretty much have won the West, I believe, like 12 out of 13 years, with Kentucky State getting in there one time, but they've always been in the SIAC championship game. So, you know, can you imagine, Brian, a replay of the Fountain City Classic as the SIAC championship game, or a replay of Tuskegee Miles as the SIAC championship game? These are some of the things that can happen with this new scheduling format. But I guarantee you, there's going to be somebody named Kelvin Durham from Fort Valley who's going to say something about that, being the fact that he will be a redshirt sophomore next year.
Yes, yes. Thank you for making sure I couldn't think of Durham's first name, so I didn't want to I didn't want to just throw it out there. But also in February, the other big news from February, conference churning. The previous month, Hampton decided to leave the Big South. Well, guess what? A&T decided to do the same thing as North Carolina. A&T decided to pull up stakes and move from the Big South to the Colonial as well. Now, they decided to do it in every sport but football. So this fall, obviously this past year was their last year playing football in the Big South, but all their other sports moved over to the Colonial for this academic year. And so now the Colonial sits with a conference of about 15 schools, and they've got Hampton and A&T.
It's like 14 or 15 once all the shuffling is done.
Okay. All right. March was
Which
a bit
would make
of a
them the
light
largest. Aren't they the largest FCS conference now?
No, I think they may have just as many now as that Big West or Missouri Valley?
Big Sky.
I think they all have
Valley.
14th. Yeah, something like that.
Right. I know the SWAC is third. I do know that.
Right. And March was a bit of a slow news month. The big news, though, came with Damon Wilson choosing to leave Bowie State and go to Morgan State. So after another three-peat at Bowie State, another successful run in the playoffs, 10 years, I believe, at his alma mater, Damon Wilson decided to take his talents to Baltimore and see what he could do at Morgan State. And that was a move that definitely shook up, shook up a lot of places, was a big shakeup in a lot of places, I guess is what I'm trying to say. just because we kind of wondered, what would it take for Damon Wilson to leave Bowie? But then he had a lot of things in place, and you kind of, that's a top-notch program at Bowie State, and so he definitely left it in good shape. So, anything you want to add on that before we get into April, Drew?
I mean, let's just think about the coach there at Bowie State, and I know I'm trying to think why his name escapes me right now.
The current coach at Bowie State?
Yes.
Oh, okay. What about
the fact that he went from linebacker coach, I believe, to defensive coordinator to head coach in about a 4-week time span?
Yes, it was. I'm trying to. I think it's. You got me here. See, when I'm sitting here trying to pull it up here, we'll get it right. I think it's Williams, Bowie State. Let's see if somebody can beat us to it. My fingers are frozen here where I'm at, Drew. So I'm just going to tell you now, my fingers are literally frozen trying to type this up now. Kyle Jackson, who took over. Kyle Jackson was an assistant. In literally a week, Kyle Jackson went from like the DB coach to the DC to the interim head coach in like a week, and did pretty good this year. I mean, actually, Bowie State had a good season, so it'll be interesting to see if they stick with Coach Jackson going into the year. But they didn't make that decision with Coach Jackson until. In terms of being the head coach until May. So Bowie did take some time to make that decision, and they chose to stay in-house a little bit with that move. All right, quickly, Drew, we got to move here because it's cold. In April, we had 4 HBCU players drafted by NFL teams. Of course, you had all of the things that happened in March. We probably left out stuff like the HBCU Legacy Bowl, the debut of that game, which was a success. You obviously had the combine type things that happened. A lot of players, pro days that happened at a lot of various campuses. So after nearly a year of inactivity, it was really good to see heading into the April draft the recognition start to flutter in. And if you want to give that credit to Coach Prime being very vocal as he was, you can. But there was also a lot of great talent and a lot of great opportunities that were put in place. So those players were, again, you had Joshua Williams from Fayetteville State, excuse me, who got drafted by the Chiefs. James Houston of Jackson State got drafted by the Lions. Jacoby Durant of South Carolina State got drafted by the Rams. And Tyree Carter of Southern got drafted by the Chicago Bears. So, Drew, as we're in sort of the off-season mode, I'm going to ask for a prediction because I think we were doing like over and under for draft picks. If I set so last year you had 4. I'm going to set the line at 4.5 for 2023. Do you think we'll have more or less players drafted in 2023?
I'm going under.
Okay. Second question, part 2. Will it be equal to what was done in 2022 or less?
And you caught me off guard with this one, Brian. I'm really trying to see out of Isaiah Land who's eligible that has a realistic shot, because the only reason I'm saying that is most of the superstars of HBCU football this year were underclassmen. So I really have to take a pause and see, like I said, outside of Land, who's really out there. Is Aubrey Miller, and you got Miller and Land. Those are about the only 2 that I could really think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you got names that might declare.
I don't care about declaring.
So
I'm talking about with a realistic shot. No offense to those who are going
well,
to declare.
but if a guy like Shaq Davis declares,
I believe
you don't think he
I
has a
believe
legit
Shaq
shot?
Davis. I think Shaq Davis only has. Is he draft eligible this year?
No, I believe he's draft eligible. I think he's either like a redshirt junior, you know, or what's
Okay.
Jadakiss Bonds might even be draft eligible. Yeah, I mean those are two big receivers for Hampton, Jadakiss Bonds for Hampton. So I mean
Right.
that's just
And
two
like I say,
names on the offensive side.
you caught me off guard. So I haven't really had a chance to do any type of research on that to see who's draft
Yeah.
eligible and see what kind of draft stock they may have.
All right, let's move on here. Let's move on into August. It was a slow summer, so if you feel like we missed anything in May, June, July, let us know because we just skipped
No
right
conference
from
churning.
April to August. Yeah, no conference churning. So if there's anything that happened that you guys can recall that happened in May,
No
June, or
COVID.
July, send a note. Yeah. The first bit of news from August, we had a new SIAC commissioner,
I do have one that we
Anthony
missed, Brian.
Holloman.
I do have one we missed in the summertime. Is it the
Okay.
summertime when all the stuff with the Southern Heritage Classic started blowing up?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, that's when all that happened. Well, that would I think that may have gone on back in April sometime,
Okay.
maybe early May. Okay, so I
And
just saw in the
that
note
the Southern Heritage
somebody said that
Classic,
Shaq Davis.
whatever the SWAC Classic that was to be played in Birmingham that was delayed for a year to replace the Southern Heritage Classic for Jackson State for the Jackson State Southern game. So that all kind of happened over the summer. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, and no, because that. Oh, well, what else that brought up? That brought up actually a lawsuit. That brought up a pending lawsuit. Don't forget, as a result of that SWAC Classic, that came to fruition via UEN and HBCU League Pass Plus, because of, and this happened during the Legacy Bowl, so this would have been late February, March. Yeah, so actually when the whole Southern Heritage stuff happened, that broke around February, March.
Right.
So yeah, you had that process of the alleged tampering with sponsors, which then led to this whole and really, if I could say what was the story of 2022, Drew, I would say HBCU coming to an understanding about what media rights was. Okay, what is and what aren't media rights? That became an over talked about topic in 2022. And so that all started as a result of what? That lawsuit and the Southern Heritage Classic, which then led to the SWAC Classic, which then led to the lawsuit. So anyway, that's a long string to untangle. And it did lead into a decision on that lawsuit too, which maybe we'll talk about next week. But all right, so can we get back to August? Can we go? Are we anything else that we
All
can
right.
think of from the summer?
That's it.
All right.
For me.
All right, let's go through August. Okay, August, new commissioner of the SIC, Anthony Holloman. You were very familiar with Anthony Holloman. And so he took over as the new SIC commissioner in August. And then, sure enough, Drew, it's time for some football games. And man, did we have drama at the beginning of the year, did we not? We had, on the
Before
lighter
one
side of
down was
just,
even played.
yeah, before a down was even played, we had compliance issues at Florida A&M to start the season, which impacted their Week 0 game against North Carolina. Many people wondered whether the team was going to actually even play that game. A lot of attention was brought out and up about some of the issues that were going on at FAMU. Of course, AD Courtney Gaucher had been let go. There's another story that we missed. He had been let go back in April, and so FAMU was dealing with interim AD and a lot of staff that had left, and just a lot of stuff. And so a lot of stuff happened in those first 2 weeks for the FAMU football team, and there was a lot of excitement.
And
I
Brian,
recall
the Gaucher story actually goes back to the meteorite story that we just got through talking about.
It does. So again, when I come back to thinking about the story of 2022, it had to be the meteorites yarn. Maybe we'll just do a podcast about that whole yarn of meteorites and how that who it affected and what did it affect, because that might be the overall HBCU story of 2022, right? But yeah, so FAMU had to deal with a lot of that going into that game. They somehow find a way to get some players on the field. They played the game. They performed well. I mean, they were within one touchdown going into that fourth quarter against North Carolina. But there is more to come with that story in the following week, and we'll get into it in just a second. North Carolina Central won the MEAC SWAC Challenge against Alabama State in the
game that would not end thanks to the weather. Matter of fact, the game that never officially ended thanks to the weather was called with about 90 seconds left in the game. After a rain delay.
I was going to say, what time did that game start and when did it end, Drew?
What time was it scheduled to start, or what time did it start? It was scheduled to start at 7 o'clock.
Tell us.
It was scheduled to start at 7:07 p.m. You know, they always start at 7 after the hour when the game's on TV for some odd reason. Okay. But the game actually didn't start till about 7:40 something. Then we had a rain delay in the middle of the first quarter, about 8 something. It took us almost 2 hours or something ridiculous like that to play a quarter. Game finally was called at 1:32 a.m. in the morning after the third lightning delay of the day.
Wow. Yeah, so that all occurred in August. Hey, Edwin Moore drops a great nugget here. He said, because of the FAMU AD and compliance issues, we learned everyone's level of compliance employees. We learned that everybody's got issues, or at least we learned who doesn't have issues, who has proper staffing.
Right. And we also learned why some schools sit better than other ones because of prior compliance issues.
Yep. Well said. Okay, moving into September. We got to move here, Drew. It's getting cold. My fingers are turning blue. September. I'm no lie. Look at these things, man. These things are blue.
Gloves, in September, Brian, we found gloves.
I don't have gloves. I'm a Florida kid.
Oh, that's right. You're a Floridian.
I live in Florida. I'm a Floridian. Okay. I don't have gloves. Okay. All right. In September, we learned that Marquise Bell of Florida A&M University made the Dallas Cowboys 53-man roster as an undrafted free agent. I believe Joshua Williams made the Chiefs. Houston made the Lions.
Made the practice squad of the Lions.
Made the practice squad. Yeah, we did end up seeing him later in the year.
Jacoby Durant made the Rams.
Jacoby Durant made the Rams. Yep. So yeah, congrats to all those guys. But I think Bell was the one who many people thought Bell should have gotten drafted, but he ended up being signed as an undrafted free agent, made his way there after some great performance in preseason. Then in September, we had the Orange Blossom Classic. And so after the heels of FAMU's game against North Carolina, the beating that just never stopped was Jackson State beating FAMU 59-3. I don't think anybody could have. I mean, I know Jackson State folks, you know, and here's the funny thing. I remember talking to Charles Bishop, he felt like that game could either be a close game or a blowout, and he wasn't just giving hyperbole, but he was right. Um, and they just and who knows, we can chalk it up to a lot of things, but mentally FAMU wasn't there, and it affected people's perception of FAMU at the end of the season as they missed out on the playoffs because of that 59-3 loss. A year ago, Jackson State beat FAMU 7-6, and everybody kind of thought Jackson State and FAMU were equal. Well, when you lose to somebody 59-3, and even though Jackson State is the number 1 team and FAMU is the number 3, people always went back to what, 59-3, Drew. And so it's hard to overcome that, right?
Yes.
Hard to overcome that. Other big things that happened in September. How about North Carolina Central beating North Carolina A&T in Charlotte for the first time in, I think, the last 5 seasons, maybe 4 or 5 times, in that Aggie Eagle Classic in front of 35,798 people in Charlotte's, I don't know what they call that stadium that the Panthers play in, but that was the largest attended crowd to see
BB&T or
a
something
game.
like that.
Yeah, something like that. But a great crowd, a great day, great game. And that was a jumping off point there, was it not? A big jumping off point there for North Carolina Central. Hampton later on in September beat Howard for the 6th consecutive time, and so the real HU is Hampton. It was Hampton. Well, you put it like this: over the last 20 years, Drew, it's kind of been Hampton. They have owned this series. What was that number you came up with? What we were looking up or recalling?
29-3. I want to say it was 29-3 over the last 32 games.
It wasn't that. Was it really 29-3? I thought it was like 16-3. 29?
It was something ridiculous.
No, it couldn't have been that.
Something ridiculous. Okay, I mean,
if it were 29
right now.
If it were 29-3, there is no way. There is no way how we would even run smack.
19-4.
Well, that's just as bad. That's just as bad.
19-4 over the last 23.
Good God. Good God, man. Yeah, so the Hampton continues to beat up on Howard, as I call him, Howard. No H, silent H, Howard.
You had gave him their former name. You told him to go back to their former name.
That's right. Yeah, I don't even remember what that was. It was like, I don't know. Well, we'll I'm sure the jokes will return in September 2023. And then also in September, how about Tuskegee? Tuskegee.
Woo!
Winning their 700th. 700. We waited a long time for that 700, Drew, didn't we? You had that story in the can for like months. But Tuskegee won their 700th football game. And then after losing the first 2 games of the regular season, then ran off 7 more wins after number 700. And like I said, really rejuvenated people's warm feelings. They renovated the stadium. They put field turf down. They reopened up the shed. It was a great homecoming in late October. It didn't end. The season didn't end.
A true homecoming in October.
Yes, yeah. So, congratulations to Coach Ruffin and a great send off. I think Ruffin is one of the great coaches in college football. I hate to see that he won't be on the sideline, but I know he's going to be doing some great work in the administrative offices and things like that, and he's going to help continue to grow Tuskegee back to their place of prominence within college football, no doubt.
Yeah.
Let's
Bryan,
to October.
Before we move to October, Edward Moore asked, how close is Bowie to Morgan? I believe, because I've actually made that ride from Baltimore to Morgan. I think it's like 35 miles or something like that, but it's about maybe an hour drive from Bowie, Maryland to Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay. All right. Moving into October. First big story, October 2nd. Lane College, Division II, SIC, goes on the road, knocks out Tennessee State. I think it was homecoming for Tennessee State.
No, John Merritt Classic.
Okay, John Merritt Classic. It was their first home game of the year. They hadn't played
in
a home
hell.
game.
First home game at Hale in like pre-pandemic.
Right, but they hadn't played a homecoming. They hadn't played a home game that entire season, correct?
That I don't know. I don't know if they had played at Nissan or not.
I'm pretty sure. I feel like no, they didn't. They didn't. I'm pretty sure. But Lane went on the road, beat Tennessee State. That was a crazy game the way it went down. Lane going for 2 in overtime. Props to them. Also, Benedict College at this point in October won their 4th game in a row, and at that point had done something which had never been done before in the program history, which is to win 4 games in a row to begin the season, and then every game after that was historic. All the way up until the 11th one when they won the SIC. And so that was just an amazing run to watch. For Benedict having the historic unbeaten regular season, but it all started after they got that 3rd one, right?
Correct.
Defending MEAC champion South Carolina State, they ended up basically, you saw them kind of lose their crown in October, as their only win, I think, in that month came against North Carolina Central. Surprisingly,
their last win of the season. They opened up the conference 1-0 and then lost every other game after that.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And then, of course, the biggest
you ain't
story.
Swag, Brian. You ain't swag.
I am swag. I am. Look, you see this right here? We swag.
That's
Coach Eddie, the lead up to the Alabama State homecoming game, which featured Jackson State. You can see it coming a mile away, as Coach Prime had already in his pressers had said, "Man, we are so excited to be invited to their homecoming," and he really hyped it up. Some disrespectful stuff in the viewpoint of Coach Eddie Robinson and his players. Jackson State would go on to get the win. Alabama State drew great numbers, but what we got was the post-game press conference of the year, as the post-game handshake turned out not to be so much. It turned out to be this thing, and then Coach Robinson dropped the "he ain't SWAC, I'm SWAC," of course, referencing his history as not only a player.
SWAC.
And then and then Coach Prime coming back with his great line of "who is SWAC if I ain't SWAC." Many people kind of took the whole thing as it may. I heard Neely from
the T-shirt
the
man made
show.
a whole bunch of money.
Yeah, the T-shirt man made a lot of money, but it also brought up an interesting conversation, which really didn't get as much steam as maybe it probably deserved, which was the I think Neely thought it was kind of coded in just the way it was said and what it meant. But at the end of the day, Drew, when it turned out to be so prophetic by what Coach Robinson said and what happened 2 months later, that I don't know. What's your take on that moment in time?
Oh, that was a media frenzy. I mean, you had non-HBCU media picking up on this particular story because of the controversy and everything that went on behind it. I was actually at Alabama State the day after "he ain't SWAC" happened. I was there when they were going back and forth on the press release in response to it, where Coach Rob had to apologize to everybody but Coach Prime in the
but why
apology.
was he? But
But
let's let people know why he was apologizing.
he was apologizing for his language, not for what he said, because he did cuss.
Not his language. Not his language.
Yeah, he apologized for cursing during the
No.
press
No,
conference. Yes,
I thought he apologized for the language that his players were using on the field,
that
which was very
that
documented and recorded.
right, and also his language in the press conference.
Okay, I didn't hear him cuss in the press
he owned
conference,
it.
but okay.
He owned
Okay.
it.
But I think he
owned
apologized. He
that
was apologizing also
for
on
that.
behalf of the language that his players used, which
Correct.
was recorded. Right.
Correct. But as far as the gist of what he said, why he said it, and how he said it, no. He
Yeah.
never apologized
Powerful.
for that. And nor should
Powerful
he.
words.
That's how he felt.
No. Two wrongs can be right.
There was no right. There was no wrong.
Right, exactly. So I think two sides, and maybe I should have said it differently. Two sides of that coin could have been right, and I think both men were right and wrong in what they said and did. So again, that was one of the highlights that we look at. If you summarize moments, that moment has got to be a top 5 moment of the year. Top 5 moment of the year, no doubt, hands down. All right, moving into November, Drew. This moment might be also a top 5 moment. College game day decided to come to Jackson State, to come to Jackson, Mississippi, on the eve of, on the Saturday morning of the Boombox Classic. Jackson State versus Southern won. Of course, those teams would play a second time in the championship game, but it was the first meeting in November. Great crowd, great momentum. So that was a good thing to see. Also in November, about Virginia Union. I mean, shockingly, losing at home to Shawan. I mean, we had pretty much all but penciled Virginia Union into the CIAA championship game as winning the North. They had gone out and beaten on the road. Check these road wins. They went out on the road and beat Valdosta State, who was ranked number 2 at the time. They beat Fayetteville State on the road in a North versus South cross-divisional matchup. They beat Bowie State on the road. So they had just gone on the road and beaten 3 teams, right? 3 teams. And yet they had later in the year, they were traveling to Virginia State. And we kind of all looked past this game against Shawan and just turnovers, burned them. And Shawan won the game, ended up winning the North, went to the championship game, and kind of left Virginia Union kind of out in the cold. Fortunately for Union, their body of work up to that point, I think that was week 9. Their body of work up to that point, their body of work had earned them a playoff spot, but they really missed out on a chance on getting to that championship game of the CIAA again in a rematch against Fayetteville State, as it turned out. It should be noted, Jada Byers of Virginia Union became the top, or was the top running back in the nation. At one point, even though he's in Division II, he had more rushing yards than any player in Division I or II. Was a first-team All-American, the sophomore. I mean, all I saw was great credit given to his offensive line and his coaches all year. Jada Byers, man, one of the players of the year. I'm sure the candidates, when we get into naming and doing all that stuff, he will be in the running. Your thoughts, anything you want to add into that about that moment?
All I'm going to say, if it wasn't for Jada Byers, we'd be talking about Emmanuel Wilson of Fort Valley State as the top running back in Division II football amongst HBCU backs. And while you're playing, Emmanuel Wilson was top 5 in the nation also. So we had 2 top 5 backs who just garnered and ran for HBCUs this season. Now, Wilson may have fallen out with the playoffs, but prior to the playoffs, Emmanuel Wilson was sitting at number 5.
Right. Also in November, Fayetteville State finally got the monkey off their back, winning the CIAA championship after being there the previous 4 seasons. They had just lost they had lost the last 4 years in the champions. They had won their South Division title for the 5th consecutive year. They finally got the win as they beat Shawan. A big sigh of relief by everybody because, Shawan being a non-HBCU school in the CIAA, trust me, everybody was like, whoo, thank God Fayetteville State for y'all winning.
Hold on to December. Put a pin in that one to December, Brian.
Right. Also in the month of November, how about Florida A&M? We talked about them.
All right. Go ahead.
What were you going to ask?
Go ahead. No, go to the Florida A&M.
Yeah, I'm just moving down the bullet list. I'm telling you, I'm cold, Drew. I'm just trying to move it down the list.
Yeah.
FAMU would end up winning 9 straight games after they beat Bethune-Cookman there in the Florida Classic. Again, go back to Jackson State loss, 59-3, 0-2. All the Rattlers did was go off and win 9 straight games under head coach Willie Simmons for the 3rd consecutive year. Winning 9 games under Coach Simmons. This year, unfortunately, Florida A&M was not selected into the NCAA FCS playoffs. And why? 59-3. Among other stuff that they tried to say, but let's be real. When it came down to it, they looked at that 59-3, and that weighed on a lot of people's mind.
Brian, who has the nation's longest win streak amongst HBCU football?
Games overall?
Who has the nation's current longest winning streak?
I don't know, Drew. Who does?
Florida A&M with 9 in a row.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, what would have been Jackson State with 12 previously, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Florida A&M owns the nation's longest winning streak, current winning streak.
Is that FCS, really? Or just in general?
HBCU football.
No. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. HBCU football. Clarify for me. I must have missed you when you said that. Also, in November, Drew, we can't dismiss the wild SWAC West.
So, Brian, tell us how you can buy your way into the SWAC championship game.
So, if you're Southern University and you're sitting at home, 1 game out of first place, and you're kind of in that 3rd, 4th mix, sitting there behind Prairie View, Alcorn State, and even Texas Southern. You're watching those 3 teams play on your bye week because next week you got to play in the Bayou Classic, and you need a lot of things to break your way in order for you to have a shot. Namely, you need Prairie View to lose. Oh, check mark. Guess that they did lose. You need Alcorn State to lose. Check mark. That happened too.
Which makes Texas Southern irrelevant at that point because the only tiebreaker you own was against Texas Southern, but that does you no good if there's a 3-way tie.
Well, yeah, and what was funny is at one point Texas Southern controlled their own destiny because of those other 2 losses, but then guess what they ended up doing late in the 4th quarter after an injury to their quarterback, Andrew Body, with a 2-touchdown lead. They ended up losing the game late in the 4th quarter. Check mark, they're done. And guess what? Southern went from being kind of, hey, we're just looking forward to playing the Bayou Classic to, the Bayou Classic means more now. It means we can actually go to the SWAC championship game if we beat Grambling in the Bayou. That was an amazing day to see how it all played out, Drew.
Brian, you're selling that short, Brian. You're saying that was an amazing day.
I am.
That all took place within an hour of clock time from the first domino to the 3rd domino falling, all within about an hour. And for us on the East Coast, that all happened between like the 3 and the 4 o'clock hour on that particular day.
Yeah, and I no lie, I think the Texas Southern one was the most stunning because of the fact that they lost their quarterback late in that 4th quarter,
and they were up by like 2 scores.
Yes, they're up by 2 scores, and so So you lost your quarterback, and then you ended up losing. I mean, just the worst of all possible scenarios. Where Texas, I mean, just amazing how that all shook out. But yeah, so Southern ended up coming out on top, winning the Bayou, and won the West. So as put it like this, Drew, as predicted, right? Yeah, that's what everybody
Yes.
predicted in the preseason. I don't think anyone predicted how it would happen the way it did.
I predicted the 5-3.
Get out of here.
Yes, I
You
did.
did?
Yes, I did.
All right, look at you.
Went back and played it on the previous show.
Okay, all right. I'll go back and look. Hey, okay, so what do we got? North Carolina A&T in the hunt for the playoffs, losing the Big South Championship game to Gardner-Webb last game of the regular season. They would finish their season 7-4, and then they would make some changes, which we'll talk about here in a moment. The Division II playoff scenarios and outcomes were finally decided. In the region of 7 teams, Benedict College ended up getting the #1 overall spot. 3 HBCUs went into the playoffs out of 7 teams. You had 2 from the SIC. Who was that, Drew? That was Benedict and no, other way around.
2 from the CIAA.
1 from the SIC, 2 from the CIAA. Yeah, that's right. Fayetteville State and Virginia Union went to the CIAA. Benedict, of course, got the bye. So Fort Valley State ended up being left out of the playoffs, and we kind of talked with Coach Gibbs and you of course you write for d2football.com. You laid out a great story. If Fort Valley State had found a way to play somebody, it could have gave them enough juice to actually get into the playoffs and be a 4th HBCU team in. And then sadly, to wrap that all up, all 3 teams ended up getting blown out in their opening games. Virginia Union ran into Wingate, and then Wingate ran through Benedict the next week, and then Fayetteville State lost. But
Fayetteville State didn't even get off the plane in Mississippi.
Yeah, and I guess, Drew, you could all sum it up to maybe, hey, first time in the playoffs is never easy. It's never easy, and so that's kind of what happened. First time in ends up being a challenge, and we watched Bowie State work into that, right? Over the last 4 seasons, we watched them kind of overcome those initial hiccups in the first week to get to the point where they made it all the way to like a regional final, I think, right?
Correct.
Also,
first time Tuskegee got there, they got blown out in the playoffs when Tuskegee was eligible for the playoffs. So,
right. One other story from November: Howard University. Actually, I gave him an H that time, Drew, because they earned a co-champion designation in the MEAC by virtue of finishing 4-1 in conference play, which was the same as North Carolina Central. And
isn't that so yakkish that your conference co-champion has 5 wins overall?
Yes, they finished 5-6 overall. By nature of the fact that Howard lost to North Carolina Central. North Carolina Central was actually the designated team to go to the Celebration Bowl. It kind of worked out well for North Carolina Central, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. All right. December. Here we are at the end of the month. I'm going to start at the bottom here, Drew, or at least I'm going to bounce around here, kind of go in order as we've seen things over the last month. North Carolina A&T fired Sam Washington. We say fired. They may have said mutually parted ways, but it sounds like they fired him. I don't know what the official phrase was. Maybe it was parted ways. But anyway, Sam Washington, who took over for Rod Broadway, won a Celebration Bowl and a national championship in his first season, will not get to transition the team to the CAA. And so that'll be interesting to see what happens there. Gabe Giardina, who did a great job at Albany State over the last 4 or 5 seasons, left to go to Western Carolina, which is, what level is Western Carolina, Drew?
FCS.
Okay, so moving up from Division II to FCS, Gabe Giardino, watch out for Western Carolina. Be a good team going forward. And as a result of the opening, Quinn Gray, the former Florida A&M quarterback slash, I think he's even a FAMU Hall of Famer, might even be a MEAC Hall of Famer. Gray is working as an offensive analyst with Memphis University, is now the head coach at Albany State, and he'll take over duties once he finishes up there. Also, you had the Bluefield. Well, okay, so the Bluefield State getting voted into the CIAA for the 2023-24 year, and Shawan not being renewed as an associate member. That happened. Bluefield State, even though their population may not skew to look like an HBCU, they are technically an HBCU, Drew. Any backstory you want to share on that?
That's always been Bluefield's goal when they completely transitioned from NAIA to Division II. Their goal has always been to get into the CIAA. I know, excuse me, I know the SIAC was in place as an alternate landing point, but they wanted the CIAA. The CIAA wanted them ever since Shawan left the CIAA. So it was something that was bound to happen.
Wow. Okay. And then the SIC new scheduling model was announced for the 2023 year. What's that going to look like, Drew? The new scheduling model.
It's an 8-game schedule. Basically, you have 4 games that are locked in, and then you will rotate 4 additional games over the next over a 4-year period. So you play 4 teams home and away for 2 years, then you flip off and you'll play the other 4 teams home and away over the next 2 years, which means a student athlete will have an opportunity to play all 12 opponents, because there are 13 football playing institutions in the SIAC over a 4-year career.
Okay. Of course, we had the SWAC championship game where sort of surrounded around the rumors of Coach Prime potentially leaving Jackson State, and then it turned out to, as the rumors got louder and the sourcing became more consistent, you learned at the kind of on the eve of the SWAC championship game that Coach Prime was going to be departing after the game, taking a plane to Colorado and accepting an offer to be the next head coach at Colorado University. All that played out in real time on social media, on YouTube, and it was fascinating, Drew. I mean, it was sad and fascinating all in the same breath because we were watching it. You're watching it, you're doubting whether it was going to happen, but the more and more the noise picked up, it was there. It overshadowed a SWAC championship game, Drew. That look, Southern did not put their best foot forward in the first quarter. Controversially, did not go with the people's choice of quarterback. I'm going to say it that way, the people's choice at quarterback, because Deshaun McCray, who was the people's choice, came in after the previous quarterbacks had given up 3 turnovers, which led to 21 Jackson State points, settled the ship, and Southern, did they outscore? Did they outscore them in the second half, Drew? How did that work out?
Yes, they did.
Yeah, they outscored them from the second quarter on.
They outscored them after the quarterback change.
Yeah, And so, I've heard even B.J. Jones say, if they would have started with Deshaun McCray, he felt like Southern could have won that game. And it really was maybe a sneak peek into what North Carolina Central would do to Jackson State. But everybody was so focused around, what was going to happen and him potentially leaving. Why was he leaving? The timing of him leaving. Credit to the players for actually persevering, winning the title. Um, and it really kind of left outside of Jackson, it left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth. And I want to say it that way because outside of Jackson, very, very opinionated thoughts on the matter. But as we learned in our
Inside of
interview,
Jackson.
in different mindset, different. They understood what the real was, right?
Yes.
So that happened, and then of course we capped off the Celebration Bowl with a great game, or we capped off the month, I guess, with a great Celebration Bowl. Record ratings, record attendance. Central, 16.5-point underdogs, and we told you on our show, Drew, take the dog. Back up the Brinks truck. Run to the ATM. Throw your money. This was a layup, Drew. There's not too many times, Drew, that everybody can get rich. This was it. And if you even listen to us say, what we say, pizza money, Drew? Pizza money on the money line, you'd have came out happy on that too. But
yes.
Yeah, Drew, there's not too many times we'll see layups like that. But that was a layup. I don't even call it a slam dunk, Drew, because everybody can't do a slam dunk. Everybody can make a layup, Drew.
Everybody should be able to make a layup, and it was sitting there for you.
It was sitting there for us. All right. Anything else we missed out of the month of December or just in general?
Forgot the coaching hire at Dale State.
Okay. I don't know who.
Lost you there. Mic check. We lost your volume, Brian.
Oh yeah, sorry, I accidentally hit the mute button. No, I was saying Rod Milstead was the I think is it Milstead was the coach at Delaware State?
Yeah, he's the one who was let go.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. We'll talk about more of the players of the year a little bit later, maybe in another show as we continue to do more wrap up shows in other sports and then just in general. But what's your overall takeaway, Drew, so we can kind of put a bow on this episode?
Just a great season. Lee Hull is the new head coach at Dale State.
Okay.
Lee Hull.
All right.
Was named new coach at Dale State. Just kind of happy about everything that's been going on. Also, speaking before I go into that, we forgot the new hire at UAPB also that occurred this week. So just a couple of those that are sitting out there that we forgot to mention. But look, Brian, HBCU football is in a great place. Yes, thank Coach Bryan for coming in and showing some things. I won't say opening up eyes. He may have opened up some people's eyes, but for me, he just showed a different way of doing things. Yeah, adding some energy to the room was probably the best way of putting that out there. But overall, HBCU, look, we've been around for 150 years.
Yes,
We're going to be around another 150 years. One of the best businesses that have made, despite the dysfunction that we may have within our business model, we have survived. There have been 107 of us that have survived. and 83 of us that play some type of competitive sports. So we're going to be in a good place, Brian. Just want to thank all the listeners, viewers, and listeners for allowing us to come into your living rooms on your phones, your tablets, your PCs, your Macs, your iPads, or whatever it is on a weekly basis. We try to give you the best that we have. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into being able to provide you content. We just appreciate you all for liking, subscribing, following, and sharing this content with you all. And although we miss them a lot of times doing the show, we do go back and read a lot of the comments that are given on all of our platforms of our show. So please continue to put in those comments. We love you guys. And once again, thank you for everything that you've done for us, because we will continue to do what we can for you and HBCU Sports.
I'd like to encourage everybody to help us continue to grow. The Black College Sports Network is part of the Jericho Broadcast Networks, and we need your help to continue to grow. You can do that by going to myjbn.com/grow, GROW, myjbn.com/grow. Make a donation. To help us as we get ready to go into 2023 and do some exciting things. It'd be really helpful. You can always support the show in a number of ways, and that's what we want to encourage. And hopefully, as you guys consume the product and consume the material, if it's pleasing to you, man, it'd be great if you just dropped us whatever you might spend on a cup of coffee or a snack at your local convenience store, or maybe if you want to go deeper investments because you know, you had a productive weekend, or if you played that North Carolina Central tip that we gave you, whatever you got to give, we'll take it. We'll love it. We'll love it. We'll appreciate it. And so we say thank you. Yeah. Hey, look, Edward, hopefully we'll be there. So again, on behalf of all of our shows, all of the family of the Black College Sports Network. Of course, Dr. Cavill is inside the HBCU Sports Lab, the Carlos Brown Show, the pregame show, the O&G Strike Zone, all of our shows. We say thank you. Wish you and your families a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and that's gonna do it. I'm up here watching a little bit of this Dallas and Eagles game, Drew. Fantasy matchups are on the line here in the playoff semifinals of my fantasy league. I've got Dallas's defense. I'm going up against the Eagles defense, and God dog it, the defense of the Eagles just scored a pick six. I tell you, I don't know how you Cowboys fans, how do you deal with Dak Prescott? This guy, anyway, got sidetracked. Sorry, Drew. But hey, Merry Christmas, everybody. We will see you sometime next week. Stay tuned. We'll tell you more. And thank you guys for supporting everything we do. And God bless everybody. Be safe. Merry Christmas to one and all. Happy Kwanzaa and all that good stuff. For Drew, I'm Brian. Peace out.
Well, holla.